Welcome, guys, to another live session. Oscar from StressFit. Today, we are here to talk about self-development subjects that I have created a theme called inner engineering. Inner engineering. I think Sadhguru has coined this really famously, and he has a great platform that talks about inner engineering. But the word itself, inner engineering, is all about reprogramming a new state of being and really understanding how to re-engineer a new self and really working out how these subconscious mechanisms and the science of the body mind, when we bring awareness to all that, that can really empower our beings to then take control and really take charge of being the best version of ourselves. Thank you so much, Tanya. So today we're here to talk about subjects that revolve around inner engineering. I wrote these subjects down in the StressFit community, and what we'll do is we'll go through the subjects, and we'll all talk about a little bit about each subject. We won't go into too much detail on each one. And the subjects we're going to talk about today are: thoughts have impact, thinking and feeling state of being, thoughts carry frequency, optimism versus pessimism, change the narrative, and then we'll go into heart-mind intelligence. We'll talk about the power of the heart. Magic is in the feeling. Drop into your heart sphere. Then we'll go into self-awareness, understanding the self. Who is the observer? Dropping or falling into emptiness. And emotional intelligence, reaction versus response, changing the feedback loops, being aware of your energy. And finally, we'll finish up with self-care, taking time to love, healthy habits, and filling your container. These are the subjects I just wrote out. We'll do our best to get through them all. If we don't get through them all, then we'll do another part two. So great subject. So let's go straight into it, guys, and talk about how thoughts have impact. First of all, I just want to say I love talking about self-development issues. I found when I was younger growing up, I just craved stimulating conversations, and I really love to talk about things that really inspired my being and empowered my being. But I found these conversations were very rare because most people in my networks and social circles just didn't have the same motivation and I guess energy towards growing as a being. So having this platform and having this amazing community to talk about these subjects is such a blessing. So I really thank you all for giving me that opportunity and being here and sharing your insight as well with the rest of the members. Okay, so the first one is thoughts have impact. We've heard that before. Thoughts create reality, thoughts have power. So what does that really mean? Okay, so the first line I wrote, the first point is thinking and feeling. So you guys probably heard me say this before. Every thought you have releases a chemical in the brain. So if you wake up in the morning and you have a negative thought and you look at yourself in the mirror and you kind of have this, really, I guess, lower vibrational thought that kind of makes you feel a little bit insecure, that kind of makes you feel like a little bit unmotivated, and you're kind of losing that enthusiasm for life, and you start thinking these negative things, then that will correspond to negative chemicals being produced in the brain. Now, as soon as you start producing negative chemicals in the brain that represent your level of mind or your level of thinking, these chemicals are then rushed down or sent down into the body, and then through just all these different chemical interactions, they start to generate a feeling in the body. And that feeling will start to then generate and then drive the same thoughts and then signal the brain to then keep producing the same negative thought process. So this is a thinking and feeling loop. So you wake up in the morning, you're feeling insecure. So you wake up in the morning, you're thinking insecure, then you're feeling insecure, then you're thinking insecure, then you're feeling insecure, and then you go out into your day and you're carrying this mood with you because you've started off the day feeling really down and having this really low energy about you, and throughout the day everything kind of ripples and is influenced on the projection of energy that you're radiating within all your interactions and within all your different experiences in that day. So it's very important to be mindful of our thought process, right? Because if we know that thoughts are releasing and producing chemicals in the brain, so if you sit here now and start thinking positive things like I can, I will, I am grateful, I am great, I am loved, I am blessed, I am happy. If you start to think all these amazing things compared to I suck, I'm just no good at this, I'm no good at that, I'm too fat, I'm too skinny, I'm too ugly, I'm not accepted. Whatever it is, whatever that dialogue that you're thinking and paying attention to, this is going to start producing chemicals, right? Producing chemicals. So it has a neurological effect in your brain. So it's not just this, spiritual, it's not just this spiritual jargon where people like, you know what, think positive, positive thinking, blah 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 blah. It actually starts to have a neurological effect. So the more there's a saying in neuroscience that goes, what fires in the brain wires in the brain, what sinks in the brain links in the brain. Neurons that fire together wire together. So the more you're firing these neural networks, the more you're firing this level of thinking, you start to create clusters of neurons that form neural networks that represent your level of mind, that represent your level of thinking. And over time, you become really good at it. So you become really good at being negative. You become really good at being down. You become really good at suffering. You become really good at hating yourself. You become really good at not loving yourself. It becomes like any other job you do at your workplace. You've mastered it. You've mastered suffering. You've mastered guilt. You've mastered this level of thinking. And all these messages now going to your body, every cell in your body, and you're made out of trillions and trillions of cells, have receptor sites. And all these chemical messengers are going to these receptor sites, and they're binding and creating a chemical reaction, which is generating a feeling, right? And over time, there's two things that can happen when your cells are getting bombarded with chemical messengers that represent this low level of thinking, because it's keeping you in a lower vibrational state. It can start to produce more more receptor sites to be prone to those chemical messengers, or they start to become desensitized. So you need more negative energy to kind of feel alive, because all the negativity you've been thinking, it just doesn't really bind anymore. So you don't really feel alive. You're very disconnected. You're very numb. So in these two scenarios, what happens is that some people will need more drama. They'll need more anger. They'll need more of something to make them feel alive, because when they don't feel like this, it's like an addiction. It's like being addicted to coffee and needing more coffee throughout the day. You go from having 1 glass to 5 glasses. That level of thinking just doesn't make them feel alive. And I know it sounds really hard to process, and it took me a while to understand this, is that some people need drama or negativity in their life to feel alive. Because if they didn't have that, they would be so disconnected and so numb that they wouldn't have any level of energy or any hormonal rush moving through the body that keeps them alive. And the other thing that can happen is the receptor sites has so many different the cells have so many different receptor sites. It just keeps on asking for more of those chemical messages. So you create this addiction to this internal chemistry. So all in all, what that means is that be very mindful of your thoughts. Okay, be very mindful of your thoughts, because they carry a frequency. Every thought carries a frequency. And that frequency, when you pay attention to it, you bring it into your field of experience. And, again, thoughts audition. They can only audition for your attention. Soon as you pay attention to a thought, that's when you create a bond. That's when you invite it in to your experience. And the more you pay attention to that thought, the more it starts to generate feelings in your body, and it becomes this vicious cycle of thinking and feeling. And before you know it, you're stuck in this loop, this feedback loop, and you don't know how to transcend this feedback loop, because you've paid so much attention to it. It's rewired your brain and it's reprogrammed your biology. And this is why some people get stuck in these lower vibrational states, because it's programmed on a neurological level and biological level. Thinking positive for one day isn't really going to help you reprogram months, years, for some people, decades of a certain level of thinking and feeling. So we must understand, to engineer a new self, the first thing that we need to be aware of is our thinking, our mindset. And again, it may feel like an effort to wake up every day and do, as Ashwata Man said, do the affirmations, do the positive thinking. When something negative comes up, to then substitute with something positive. It may be effort at the start. You may even feel fake doing it. You may feel so out of character doing this. But this is all about reprogramming. It's about consistency. It does take time to sit there and install these habits in your subconscious mind. So then when you've done it enough times, it's projected back as a new program, as new software, because now you're relearning, or you're kind of relearning a new level of thinking. But doing it one day, thinking positive one day isn't enough. We have to be consistent, and we have to understand through the law of repetition, what we repeat over and over again, we eventually become. So be aware of your thinking patterns. Even if you're just sitting there and what thoughts are appearing, really be the gatekeeper of your thoughts. Really understand that you have this element called attention, and attention is like a spotlight. Where you shine it, it's going to shine that area. It's also it's such a powerful element to our experience that paying attention to thoughts, you're bringing them into your field of experience, into your body, into your being, into your consciousness. But you have a choice. And if you start to mature your attention, and that's what meditation does, meditation is like sit. You're telling your attention to sit. So it's not sitting there like the monkey mind, jumping from thought to thought to thought to thought to thought, really randomly. And it's chaotic, but through meditation, through breath work, through any sort of practice that allows you to focus and develop your concentration, we start to really bring our attention back and pay attention to the thoughts that represent your highest qualities or your highest excitement. And this is very important, very, very important when we want to re-engineer a new self, is to get your thinking right. So next time you're thinking and a thought appears that doesn't represent your highest potential, that doesn't represent your highest excitement, just say to yourself, okay, does this thought represent my highest potential? Where is this? Why am I paying attention to a thought that isn't really? And sometimes it's happening so unconscious that you haven't been conscious of these feedback loops, that it's doing it automatically. The ego is just taking your attention and just giving you these feedback loops that just keep you in this lower level of vibration. So you got to then channel your attention to the thoughts that represent your highest potential. Alkia says, I think these are the first steps, because I'm at the point I detach from my mind, so I don't need positive thoughts anymore. I just let them pass. Yeah, absolutely. And we'll get into self-awareness soon when we become the observer. But when we start to really, reprogram our brain, being the observer is great, because you're just open and you're just allowing things to come and go, and you're just in this state of oneness and witnessing. But I personally like to really program my brain with positive thoughts, and why I do that is then when I'm negative, or when I'm in, when I've been triggered or activated, because I get triggered a lot and I have to become aware of my trauma, and I have to become, I don't stay in this active state for too long, because I've programmed myself to be so positive for so long that it doesn't take long for all the positive programming to come over. And it's great to do this throughout the day, because it's very difficult for me anyway to stay in this state of witnessing and awareness when I'm working, when I'm just going by my day, when I'm in my, interactions and relationships and all that kind of stuff. It'd be great if I was just the awareness all the time, but to stay in this very state of awareness, it is very, very difficult. So having the ability to reprogram your brain and re-engineer a new self to be more positive really helps you navigate your social experiences with more of an optimistic mindset. And there's so many research studies that have shown that being an optimistic has so many health benefits, and we'll go into that in a second. I think I read in You Are the Placebo by Dr. Joe Dispenza. They did a research study, and they in this research study, a lot of people were told to just be very optimistic no matter what they did. Just be very, very, very optimistic. And before they started, they scanned all their genes, and they scanned all their, I guess they did all the blood work and all the different health scans that they do. Then after around, I think it was a 1 year or a very long time, the study went for a long time, they then scanned their genes, and epigenetically, they started representing genes that were really, really good for the immune system. They're really good for just a longevity. The telomeres in their DNA had lengthened. There's so many amazing things happen in the body just through holding and possessing an optimistic mindset. And like that saying goes, it's like looking at a glass that is half full or half empty. And this all comes back to your point of view. Point of view is so important. Perspective is so important, because one person can scan the environment to be threatening and anxious, while another person can scan the environment to be loving and harmonious. And that perspective that we adopt is doing so many things, not only into the body, but into the space around you, what it is projecting into the quantum field, the space, the ether, into your environment, just through perception. Always adopting a healthy mindset is not only going to be healthy for your body, not only going to help reprogram your brain and really help nourish the cells of the body, but your energetic state is also going to be healthy. And it comes down to perception. Everything in life is point of view. And if we have a point of view today that we're looking at something with a very negative feeling because something negative that happened to us, and we felt the stress and anxiety, but over time, I can guarantee you, as you grow in wisdom and in self-development, you will learn how to look at that perspective through a positive lens, because now you've acquired the insight and you have the programs that allow you to perceive things differently, because memory is very creative. How you look at the past today, what might be completely different to how you look at the past 3 weeks from now, 3 years from now. It's very creative. And what you tell yourself today as a story, as a narrative about the past, you can change that to something completely different. And this is very evident when we fight with people. We hate them one day, and we're telling everyone how much we can't stand this person. But once we make up with that person, our narrative changes, and we're telling everyone a different story about that person, because our perspective is changing. So really understanding that we can change our perspective to be more healthy, which then allows us to cultivate a healthier mind, is very, very, very essential to our self-development and growth. Because when we perceive things with a healthy lens, we're emitting a certain frequency out into the world as well. When we see life through a perspective that is emitting a very lower frequency, because we're perceiving life to be threatening, well, that's going out into the field. And there are unseen forces of interaction through energy that we are not aware of. We don't have the right instruments to understand this. But I can almost guarantee you, on such an innate level, I know that your projection of your energy on what's going out there into the field has such an effect to what's coming back at you on so many different levels. So really understanding what you're emitting. If you think, for example, bad things always happen to me, why are people always treating me like this, or whatever it is, any unhealthy level of thinking, even though you're a victim, and it's not your fault, the body has no logic. There's no logic. So it just knows that you're in this state of suffering and you're emitting this frequency, and you're like, okay, bad things are always happening to me. And that frequency is going out into the field. And then most likely you're going to be given more experiences that validate this level of thinking. And it's no different to when you think of a certain car you want to buy, or you're thinking of something, and then it appears, because now your awareness is looking for that a little bit more. And I think there's a science behind it, and a part of a brain that looks for that, because you've kind of programmed yourself to be more prone to looking for that image or object. It's the power of focus. The power of focus, where we channel our focus, has such a important role in what we manifest into our lives. And then that goes back with the frequency that you're emitting out into the world. And the next thing I've written here is the narrative. So bringing that all back into how you re-engineer a new state of self. Well, the first thing, again, is being aware of your thoughts. Okay, really understanding that through the power of attention, you have the ability to channel your attention into thoughts that really represent your highest potential. 2 is understanding that thoughts carry frequency, and that every thought you are bringing into your field of experience, you are charging your body with an energy that is either going to uplift your being or then bring your being down. Next is understanding that having a healthy perspective, changing your point of view on experiences, is always going to be healthy for the body. The last one for this subject is changing the narrative. This is a big one. We talk about this all the time, is the narrative. What story do we tell ourselves? Now, this is so important because if I sit here and I tell myself a story about a future that hasn't happened yet, oh, I can't do that. That's not going to happen to me. It's going to take so much hard work for me to get there. Whatever it is, whatever narrative that you are feeding yourself that comes from a place of limitation is one narrative. And another narrative is I can get there. I'll find a way to get there, and I'm going to work very hard to get there. And I know in my heart that once I put in the energy, that things are going to work out and everything's going to be great. That's another narrative. I can equally believe that narrative. If I think I was listening to Peter Crone, and he explained this beautifully. He was talking to an NBA player, right? And this NBA player, he was shooting really badly at the free throw line. Like his average was like 60%, and then they hired this professional to then talk to him about how he could change his mindset to become more efficient at free throws. So he sat there and he said, okay, he started talking to this basketball player, this NBA player, very, very big professional. And he started saying, okay, so how do you feel when you go to the line to throw the free throws? He's like, well, I feel a lot of anxiety. I feel a lot of stress. I'm shooting at 60%. My club wants me to be shooting at 80%. And he goes, whenever I get there, I just feel this, burden and pressure for me to shoot better at, and it just affects me. And he goes, okay, well, what if I told you that you're shooting at 90% now, and that next time you go to the free throw, that you're going to shoot at 90%. You've always been shooting at 90%, and that no one really cares about your percentage. You just need to play basketball because you love playing basketball. And whenever you step to that free throw line, just be you, be comfortable, and just know that, your shooting isn't 60%. And that's what you're telling yourself. It's just a number. You're shooting at 90%. And automatically his shoulders dropped. Like his shoulders dropped and he was just so much more relaxed. And he said, the specialist said to this guy, he goes, well, both narratives are true because they both haven't happened. You haven't shot tomorrow's free throws. You haven't stepped to that line. One narrative tells you you're shooting at 60% and there's all this pressure and anxiety on you. Another narrative tells you that you're shooting at 90% and everyone believes in you and no one really cares what happens as long as you're enjoying what you do. So both narratives are true, but he's been believing a narrative that has been giving him anxiety and stress and creating all this pressure that it's affecting his performance. But soon as a new probability, a new possibility was presented to this professional, his whole demeanor changed, his whole perspective changed, and he was more relaxed because he stopped believing a narrative that brought him down. Now, I'm just paraphrasing, and I'm sure the interview went a lot different to what I said, but that's what I took away from that. And it made me realize that whether you're a professional, whether you're a mom, a dad, whether you work, whether you don't, whatever you are, whatever personality you've adopted, whatever role you play in society, it doesn't matter. What matters is when it comes to being your best is the narrative. What are you telling yourself? The inner critic, the inner commentator, there's different names for this, but the story you tell yourself is so, so crucial for your health, for your vitality, for your positivity, for your enthusiasm, for your love for life. So when you start telling yourself a story that is projecting into a future that hasn't happened yet, you are bringing anxiety into your life if that story is bringing you down, if that story doesn't line up with your highest potential, your highest excitement, your highest freedom. But if you tell yourself a story that does, I am great and I am loving and I'm going to go out there and I'm going to be my best and I am going to succeed and that, whatever it is, and you have to be creative with your narrative, then you're feeding yourself positivity and you're tuning into a different timeline, into a different alignment, right? Because I do believe through choices, actions and behaviors, we're jumping from quantum timelines to timelines. Every choice you make will create a different timeline to reach your destination. And there are infinite level of timelines. Like if I did this live today or if I canceled it, I go on two different timelines. Every choice is affecting a different timeline. So by thinking a certain way, it's funny how things can change overnight when you're thinking right. By thinking a certain way, by telling yourself a different narrative, you can change your timeline, just like that. And then your reality will start to change. So be very mindful of your narrative because it plays such a big role. And this is a big subject in itself that maybe, I'll cover a little bit more in depth on a future live. Now, again, the points I'm going through today, we're just touching base on all these points. And it might feel a little bit rushed, but the point is today just to kind of, explore all these little points and bring it all together on how we can re-engineer a new self. So the next subject that I want to touch up on is heart-mind intelligence. Okay, the power of the heart. So the heart is an independent organ. It has over 70,000 neurons. It produces over 5,000 more amounts. It produces over 5,000 more amount of magnetic energy than the brain. The brain produces electrical energy. So the brain produces electrical energy. The heart produces magnetic energy, 5,000 more times than the brain, and together it produces an electromagnetic field, electric magnetic field that goes out into your space, and it creates this toroidal field. It's called, and this field is your aura. It's this electromagnetic, broadcast. It's this electromagnetic broadcast that is around your body. And that's why when you walk into a room full of people, you don't have to say a word, but the heart's energy is sitting there and picking everyone else's field. And this is what we call a vibe. I like that person's vibe. I really didn't like that person's vibe. And you can walk into a room, and before the attention goes on the realm of language or communication, innately you can feel everyone's vibration, and it's through the heart. The hearts are communicating. And in some instances, through the power of intention, your heart field can stretch out to a different country and really affect someone else's field. And there's so many studies that support this, which is another subject. But the power of the heart is enormous, enormous. And there's a saying that I love: the heart knows, the mind thinks. The heart knows, the mind thinks. Okay. The heart is this big instrument that has all these amazing functions. Not only does it release these amazing chemicals like oxytocin, vasopressin, amazing neurotransmitters that give you this loving, euphoric state in the body, but every heartbeat, duduf, duduf, is creating a vibrational field. Every heartbeat, and that vibrational field is going out into your body and interacting with all your cells. So when you're in a coherent state, there is a certain heartbeat compared to when you're in an incoherent state, and that heartbeat is communicating with all your cells. It's a vibrational field. So through meditation, through breath work, through exercise, whatever you do, it really helps you get connected more to your heart and more to the present moment, allowing you to have a healthier heartbeat. And this brings your anxiety down. This brings your stress levels down, because when we're not really in tune with our heart and we're living in the head all the time, in the noise, in the faculties of the ego, and we're just kept sabotaged. We're sabotaged with all an influx of thought process. The heart's neglected. And then we don't really have this connection with the heart, and then it starts to beat in a way where it's very abnormal, and then this starts to create anxious, unsettled feelings in the body. When you can learn that no matter how noisy the brain is, to come and connect to your heart and just feel your heartbeat, and sit there and just start to then produce these loving feelings, and just to breathe and connect and tune in to each heartbeat. It's amazing what it does to your body, because now the algorithm of the heart's changing, the beats are changing, everything's changing. And it's like a mother that picks up an infant, when a newborn, there's no communication. There's interaction through energy, and the heartbeat is one of the most, in my opinion, potent levels of communication, because they can hear the heartbeat. If a mother's anxious and stressed and going through a bad day and it's beating really fast, compared to if the mother's in a loving state, singing to the baby, has this very coherent heart state, she's got good vibes, the baby will respond to that, because the baby's in this pure state of theta, they call it theta brainwaves, where it's just purely absorbing this heartbeat. And this is how important the heartbeat is. So always have time. Your meditation is great, but just connect to the power of the heart. The next point is the magic of feeling. When you can give your mind a vacation and walk downstairs and connect to your heart sphere, and then start to feel, because you are a conductor of energy. Before you're a physical being, before you're a human being, before you're the roles you play in society, before anything, you are an energetic being. At your most fundamental level of existence, there is an animation, there is an essence, there is this pulse, there is this consciousness, and there is an element called energy, which we label it energy because we just don't know what the hell it is, that is within your body. And the heart is a conductor of energy. It processes energy. It helps the flow of energy. So when you can drop in to the heart sphere and you start to feel gratitude, you start to feel enthusiasm for life, you start to feel inspiration, all the relationships that may be negative in your life, you start to look at these people with positivity, send them good energy, send them love, whatever it is, and just do that what they call the metta meditation, which is sending loving intention to everyone, and just do it from your heart. This is a very powerful practice. It's not some hoo-ha science. It's actually a very powerful practice, because cultivating these really higher vibrational states in the body is so healing for the body. Gratitude is the antidote to stress, right? It kills stress. When you are grateful and you're cultivating this state of gratitude, don't even worry what the word gratitude means from a thought process. The actual energy of gratitude, the actual energy of love, the actual energy of peace, these are just currents of energy. That's all they are. And then, yeah, we can have these concepts and representations through language that understand these energies a little bit more in detail, but they're just currents of energy. When you start and learn how to conduct higher frequencies in the body, and this is no different to what Dr. Joe Dispenza calls elevated emotions, when you start to conduct these energies in the body, you start to really empower your being. You become a creator, you start to empower your being, living in a state of creativity, and you shift from survival to creativity, because you're not living through the hormones of stress. You're not a victim of circumstance. You're not sitting there drowning in these really lower emotional states that that bound you to past experiences that you had no control over. You're now taking your power back. You're becoming present. You're elevating your emotions. You're sitting in the heart sphere, and you're starting to send your body love and good intention and connecting to the power of your heart. And now going a little bit further, projecting into the future and really focusing on what you want out of life, and really focusing on abundance, and really focusing on anything that really helps you. Like, we all have desires, we all have goals, we all have ambitions. But when you ask someone, for example, okay, ask her, what do you want out of the future? What do you want to achieve? What are your goals? What are you striving for? Okay, I might say I'm striving for success. I'm striving for freedom. I want to buy a big house. I want a sports car. Whatever it is, why do I want these things? It's because they're going to give me a sense of feeling. They're going to make me feel more abundant. They're going to make me feel more success. What we're all beyond what we want to achieve, whether it's a partner, because if we want to manifest a partner into our life, or a loving relationship, it's because we want to feel love. If we want to manifest materialistic things in our life, because we want to feel a sense of freedom or abundance. The point is, we're always chasing a feeling before we are chasing the outer manifestation, or the symbol, or the object that represents that feeling or an experience. So if we go directly to the feeling, and we start to go into the power of the heart, and we drop into the heart sphere, and we project ourselves into the future, and we imagine that if we have this perfect experience, this perfect outcome, this perfect event, circumstance, whatever reality you want to manifest, what is that going to feel like? What is that going to feel like? And then you start to then feel it, but you adopt it with every cell in your body. You cannot have any doubt in your mind that this isn't your reality. This is doing this before bed and then going to sleep. And this is what ayahuasca taught me. It is so powerful, because a lot of change, a lot of your power happens when you're asleep. We create tomorrow through dreaming, I believe. Dreams are so important, whether you're aware of it or not. But the energy we put in today is the results we get tomorrow, meaning that if you can really feel a future that brings you abundance, that brings you happiness, that brings you whatever it is, and you adopt it, you embrace it, you feel it, you see it, and you do that with repetition, I can guarantee your life will start to change, because you no longer have to worry about the experience on an outer experience, on an outer level. Sorry, you're already living it. So it's none of your business how it happens. It'll manifest the way it manifests. Just trust the process and trust the feeling, because if you're already there, if you're already in that space, it doesn't matter what happens out there. Out there is just a dance, a dance of life. It's always changing. It's impermanent anyway. It comes and goes. Nothing in life lasts. It's in this constant state of transience. It's always changing. So trying to hold on to something outside of yourself is ludicrous, because you're not going to hold on to anything, because everything's going to go. The biggest mountain, the biggest building, the most fanciest TV, whatever it is, it's all going to deteriorate, right? So understanding this lesson of life and really connecting to something that's eternal, which is the energy in the body, is going to be a lot more, it's going to give you a lot more dividends, and it's going to be a lot more satisfying in the long run than kind of depending your happiness from the objective reality, the objective world. So drop into your heart sphere, believe in the magic of the heart, and really understand the power of feeling. It's too often that we are haunted by feelings from the past, right? Because we go through certain experiences in the past, negative experiences, and these negative experiences, if we don't have the support system or the self-awareness, or in the right state of mind to really process these feelings out, we suppress these feelings, we forget about it, we kick it under the rug, right? And then over time, it manifests as anxiety, as stress, as personality disorders. All these different things start to manifest because we're suppressing all these emotions and feelings in our body, and we don't know how to deal with that. We don't know how to deal with these emotions because, we wake up tomorrow and we just forget, or we just kind of carry on and we talk about it, or whatever it is. We're not really dealing with the emotion because a part of us in that moment of time is still suffering. It's still suffering. But now we're going to go into self-awareness. When we become aware, right? When we start to become aware, a lot of the shit you haven't dealt with starts to surface. It does. If I'm carrying a lot of anxiety, if I'm carrying a lot of unsettledness, and I just sit here and I just be quiet and I sit here, don't even call it meditation, just sit here, close your eyes, you watch how uncomfortable that will be for someone that is very anxious. It's going to be very uncomfortable. Someone that is very anxious, that's at a high level of anxiety, that's carrying a lot of stress, they can't sit there for 20 minutes and be in a level of perfect contentment. It just doesn't happen that way. And correct me if I'm wrong, right? They will feel their anxiety. That's the first thing they're going to feel is like, what am I doing? I can't sit here. Like, this is really stupid. I'm bored. I'm restless. I've got to do this and then that and this and that. And it just starts all coming up. It starts coming all up. Everything starts to surface because what the meditation does is it allows you to introspect and really see all the emotional barriers and all the unsettled energy and all the different energetic parasites, if you like, that is kind of housing in your being, housing in your temple. So by sitting there and just being quiet and still, you start to now shine the light of awareness to what's happening in your body. And at the start, it is very difficult. It is very, very difficult and challenging because every impulse in your body is telling you that this is silly, this is anxious, I can't do this, like, what am I meant to do? And the narrative starts to come in and starts to play out, and you're in this kind of state, right? You're in this state where it's creating a lot of, restlessness. But sit, be quiet, and you watch all your anxiety surface. And if you have that warrior's mindset, that Buddha mindset, and you can just sit there and observe, the body will naturally burp it out. The body has the intelligence to flush these emotions out if you are quiet enough. If you understand how to channel your attention, if you understand the difference between identification and resistance, and if you can just stay in a state of observation, observe. There is two different types of experience: thought identification and thought observation. Thought identification and thought observation. It's completely it changes your whole paradigm. When you can just be aware of your thoughts, of your anxiety, of your stress, of all the programs that no longer serve you, You are no longer the programs. You're no longer those thoughts. You're no longer the propensities, the impulses, and all the crappy energy you've been carrying around. Why? Because you are the conscious observer. You are the conscious observer that is being aware of all this stuff that is now surfacing in the body. Now, if you do not identify in this moment, if you just keep watching and observing and perceiving and be the witness, after a certain amount of time, the feedback loops start to weaken because, well, like that saying goes, where attention goes, energy flows. You're no longer paying attention to it. That energetic bond is starting to weaken. And over time, you put the brake on these automatic programs that govern your life because you are now the conscious observer. You're now looking at it from a higher state of awareness, a higher state of consciousness, and you're allowing all these programs to come up, and the body starts to prune away all these useless connections because you no longer need it. You're just watching it. You're watching it like you're watching a movie. You're just observing it. And because now they're not leaving you in this state of unconsciousness, consuming your mind through all these thoughts, they just start to wither away. It's almost like getting a snowball, these little things in Christmas, and you shake and it goes everywhere. And then over time, it just starts to settle. This is what happens if you watch and you observe. So this is what self-awareness is, becoming aware of the self. So once you shine awareness of the self, the self isn't going to shine immediately. Presence or the self isn't something you grasp and say, okay, I found presence. It's not something outside of you. It's something you expose yourself to because it's already within you. Presence is always already within you. Enlightenment is already within you. Perfection is already within you. You are already perfect the way you are. It's whether you have the level of awareness to expose your attention to that level of presence, to that level of self, to that level of perfection in your own being. And if you don't have that level of awareness, it's because you've got all these this crappy emotional barriers and energies and frequencies that you've been harboring around that need to be liberated. They need to be liberated. They need to be flushed out. They need to be ushered out of the body. But when you're thinking all the time and you're living in the prison of the mind and you're always kind of identifying with every single thought, it just keeps everything alive and noisy and it creates this static state in the body. But through just being aware, just watching, witnessing, observing and breathing and not touching anything at all, not allowing it to affect your being, just watch. Because now you are in a state again of thought observation. You are the conscious observer. And the more you do this, the more awareness you start to gain. The more awareness your awareness starts to heighten, the more self you start to cultivate, right? And this is what the spiritual gurus, this is what a lot of these amazing teachers are teaching us is be the observer, be the awareness. But for a lot of us, it's very hard to grasp that because all we've done our whole lives is identify with the psychological mind. We identify with every thought, we identify with every feeling, that it has become so habitual that this is what we're prone to. This is what governs our moods. This is what governs our actions and behaviors, because it's just all we know. These are the roles we play. And this is, to kind of go and shift into a state of awareness is the death of the ego. And it's scary for some of us, but some of us realize that on the other side is the self. The other side is the phoenix ready to rise. And the other side, it is a new chapter ready to be turned, however you want to look at it. But you must go through that dark night of the soul, which is to really kill the ego and observe from a higher state of consciousness and realize that you are not your thoughts. You are not your feelings. You are not the anxiety. You are not the stress. You are not your roles. You are not the past. You are not the future. You are at a higher level of awareness, witnessing this phenomena happening in your being. But when you identify with it, you limit your consciousness to that level of identification. You limit your consciousness to that level of identification. But your consciousness is infinite. It is infinite. It is so expansive that you can't even measure it. The most sophisticated scientific equipment today cannot even measure consciousness. And you are consciousness. Everyone living and breathing today has a consciousness, and that is the marvel of life, because we all have this divine spark, but no one knows what it is. Geetha says, but then what worth do we have to our feelings? Feelings are an emotional guidance system. They are very, 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 very relevant and essential for us to navigate through this social experience. Feelings give us, a direct experience of our reality. We need feelings because it allows us to really be connected to life. Feel, embrace, immerse yourself in the feeling, but don't identify with it to the extent where it's bringing your energy down and depressed and keeping you in this lower vibrational state. Understand from a higher level of awareness, there are feelings that uplift your being that you want to cultivate. And it's okay to be identified with these feelings, to really kind of immerse yourself in that. But the feelings that bring you down, the feelings that are haunting you, the feelings that have no purpose in your highest potential, no purpose in the best version of yourself, well, we don't really want to be identifying with those feelings. So we just observe them and let them come and let them go like visitors. But that is not to say that there is no purpose to feelings. There is no purpose to thoughts. There's a purpose for everything if we look deep enough, but be creative enough to understand what elements or what thoughts or feelings you want to harbor and foster into your own experience, because you really want to uplift your being so you can be the best version of yourself every single day, right? And that's what life's about. If you're not waking up every morning, jumping out of bed, ready to embrace today, then you are struggling to find the information that inspires you. So go out there and really start to find that information. And next, we're going to go into dropping into emptiness and falling into emptiness. Like Alkia said before, when you get to a certain level of self-development, and there's no one or two levels, sometimes the most powerful way to transcend reality and find solace in your own being is to fall into emptiness. Just be empty and just detach completely and disconnect from reality, from your senses. And this is meditation. This is meditation. That the heart of meditation, the heart of mindfulness, is to disconnect and be mindful of your reality without identification. It all comes back to the fundamental teaching of being the awareness. In Tao Te Ching, a famous book written by Lao Tzu, and I've got a great course on this called The Way of the Tao, it's all about falling into emptiness. Because when you fall into emptiness, you allow the experience to bring you into you allow the experience to bring you into that experience, meaning that there's no resistance to what is, there's no identification to what is. You're just open, and whatever happens will draw you in when it's meant to draw you in. It's a natural unfolding of life. You're not in a hurry. You're not kind of sitting there impatiently. You're not kind of so eager about anything. You're just kind of in this content state. You're very open, and you're allowing life to move through you without resistance, without obstructions, without any level of, without any level of identification. So that there's this natural harmonious feeling of living in the flow, as many people would teach, many teachers, which they famously say, live in the flow. You let the flow of life move through you. So that comes from complete acceptance. When you completely accept what is, that is probably one of the most peaceful feelings, because you're no longer trying to control the outcome. You're no longer trying to control what happens tomorrow. You just completely accept. You accept what is. And it goes back to, a couple of great stories we learned from A New Earth about, the story that Is That So? The monk, no matter what happened to him, all he said was, is that so? Is that so? And at the start, so many things happened to him that he could have brought into all the drama and all these things happening to him, but his response to all the drama and negativity was, is that so? At the end, the truth prevailed and everyone apologized to him. And what he said was, is that so? But at no time did he involve himself so much into the external experience that caused all this drama and negativity in him. He stayed detached. He lived in the flow. He was open, and he was very content with whatever happened. And all he said was, is that so? And there was another story where, the guy kept on saying, maybe, maybe, maybe. So all these things happened to him, and he was like, maybe, maybe, maybe. Then all these negative things that happened to him, and he said, maybe, maybe, maybe. And these negative things that happened to him actually ended up being positive things, because if he hadn't left his house that day, then he wouldn't have been caught in a landslide or something like that. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but the point of the story is that he never got so invested in the outcome of his experience. He never got so invested, so therefore it allowed him to stay in this state of contentment no matter what happened. So no matter what happens, you're just content. So now you're not like this yo-yo of emotions going up and down. 1 minute you're happy, 1 minute you're sad. And when you're happy, you're waiting for something unconsciously to make you sad. And when you're sad, you're waiting for something to make you happy, because it's this dualistic nature of living reality, because you're not content. These emotions, happiness and sadness, are biochemical emotions, right? They are influenced and produced through external environment, through things outside of ourselves. But emotions like joyfulness and contentment, these are, these beautiful frequencies that are available to us, that come from a place of presence. And when we expose our being to joyfulness, peacefulness, presence, it will last a lifetime. It will last forever. And it's not influenced, or it's not bound by duality, where 1 minute you're happy, 1 minute it's sad, and your mood's all over the place. And again, going back to these two stories, by staying detached and by staying in this state of flow, you allow these experiences to move through you, and you don't have so much emotional investment in the outcome. And this allows you to be more at peace. And being at peace is everything in life. Nothing is worth your peace of mind. Nothing. Nothing. No amount of money is worth your peace of mind. And that's why in every cemetery you see RIP, rest in peace, because they know on some level, someone knows that when you're not at peace, the soul is shaken up and you get caught between bardos, meaning you get caught between different vibrational states. And that's why maybe there's paranormal activity. I don't know. But rest in peace. Have a peace of mind. Don't let anything influence your peace. So always be aware of that. Now we're going to a couple of cool things. Emotional intelligence. Okay, when it comes to inner engineering and really trying to cultivate a new state of being, there's a big difference between reaction and response, right? When people are talking to you and you get triggered, you are going to react. And when you react, it's most likely coming from an emotional wound you haven't dealt with, right? Because that emotional wound it's so sensitive that energy, that emotional charge is taken completely over you. Your nervous system has tilted, and now, like a pressure cooker, you just come out and you react. And sometimes your reaction isn't the best way to deal with a situation or a person, because then triggers the other person's pain body, as we've learned about, and they react, and the outcome is very negative and no one wins. But if you respond, take a moment to breathe and process response. Practice the pause. This is one of the biggest valuable lessons that I still need to learn in my life. And I really love talking about this, because it ingrains how important this is. That should be our mantra. For many of us, practice the pause. Because how many times have we said things and we'll be like, in retrospect, I shouldn't have said that. I should have said something different. That was my fault, because when we're dealing with the world and we're dealing with other personalities, you got to remember 90% of people, they're not on a path of self-development. There isn't. There's a big population out there that are living in these program states that are very egotistic and very identified with all the programs in their mind. So when you react to someone like that, they're going to react straight away. And if they've got a heavy pain body, then that reaction, and that happened to me today. I got blamed at one of the job sites that I'm managing for someone. They blamed me for all these things. And because when I got blamed, my ego couldn't take it. And I was just justifying instead of putting my hand up, breathing and saying, yes, I was in the wrong. And then that justification and my reaction, because I had all this negative energy thrown at me, triggered their pain body and their reaction, and it ended really poorly. And it ended a really great working relationship. And I apologize and everything, of course, because I was able to bring awareness back into that. But I learned a very valuable lesson, is that I'm too quick to react when I get blamed for something. I don't like getting blamed for things. And I acknowledge that, and I put my hand up and say, I need to work on that. When someone blames me for something, my ego is so strong that the defense mechanism is just to kind of deflect. And because I strive for perfection and I do my best to be my very best, that sometimes putting my hand up and saying I'm wrong in heated situations is such a task for me, because I need to practice the pause. When someone was throwing all that negative energy at me, if I didn't respond and if I had the awareness in that moment to go, okay, this person is triggered, I can read his body language, I can see it on his face that he is throwing a lot of negative energy at me. If I just breathed in that moment and I responded and I said, okay, you're right, I hear you, I'm really sorry, whatever I needed to say, it would have been a more healthier response that would have then led to a more positive outcome. And the point is that we need, thank you, Claire, and thank you for everyone supporting the channel. We need to practice the pause for people like myself and maybe some of you guys, I don't know. It is so important and it will help you so much in life, because there's going to be another moment where life is going to test you. And if you react and you don't practice the pause, I can almost guarantee you that in retrospect, you would have been like, whoa, I could have done that and really control that situation and had a healthier outcome. But whatever it is, there's no regrets, and you live and learn from it, and you move forward. But the message is to practice the pause. There's a massive difference between reaction and response, and it can save relationships, it can save working relationships, and it can save God knows what else in your life if you practice the pause and respond, process and respond. Bob says, say I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. And the vibe changes. Yes, the Ho'oponopono. Changing the feedback loops. Okay, feedback loops, guys. Feedback loops. This is a big one. This is a big one because for many of us, we approach situations with unconscious assumptions. We approach situations with preconceived perceptions. We approach situations with attitudes and behaviors that are already programmed within us. And when we do that, then it stops us from having this openness and embracing the experience wholeheartedly, because we have all this programming in our minds that have now molded a certain perspective, right? So it's no different to, for example, if you're young and a dog bites you and it's very horrific, it's very stressful, and it was very scary, and you run home and you're crying and you got to get stitches. That memory in itself, it was so fearful that it programmed this very negative perspective towards dogs. Now that becomes a defense mechanism because the body will do whatever it can to protect you from getting bitten by a dog. Fast forward 10 years in the future and you're sitting there in a social interaction, that same breed of dog comes running your way. What happens? What happens to the body? It's a trigger that triggers a defense mechanism because we identify with the dog, we associate it to a memory, and we respond with the feeling. And you're going to be like, oh shit, I need to run, a flight or fight response. And you start to feel all this anxiety and stress. Knowing that example and understanding that mechanism, we can all, it's a very simple example. Anything that happens to us, anyone that hurts us, it's the same principle. Anything we go through that really stresses our nervous system are all bound to this principle, this mechanism. So now we're moving through life and things are happening and we're like, shit, I can't go there. Oh, I can't do this and that and blah, blah, blah. And there's all these unconscious assumptions. There's all these feedback loops that are now governing your choices and actions, and you're not living life at your full potential. It's great for some things, like if it's meant to keep you alive, because now when there's a scary dog running your way, or you can see that dog, you're not going to kind of go near that dog because it represents danger. Or back in the day, if it was a lion, it's a great mechanism. It's a great defense mechanism that evolution has equipped us with. But today, that mechanism, when it becomes overly used through so many different aspects in our life, it can really hold us back from us being our full potential. Now, I don't want to go too much into this because this is a big subject. And if you want me to cover the feedback loop, subconscious programming, and how the subconscious mind works, I'll cover that next week. It's a subject that I do love talking about. It's a very intricate subject, and it's a subject that, really, we really need to go deep into understanding how, through identification, response, and through identification, association, and response, we start to program our minds with all these feedback loops. Now, I will say, to change the feedback loops, you have to be aware of the feedback loop. Bringing awareness to a certain feedback loop or a certain mechanism or a certain attitude or a behavior or an action that doesn't represent, again, your highest potential, is the way you reprogram the feedback loop. But we'll go deeper into that in another session. But again, another thing to be aware of when you want to re-engineer a new self is that there are all these feedback loops that are governing your life. Start to become aware of them. Start to become aware of why you don't like certain things. Start to become aware of why you hate certain things and why you're repelled by certain things and why you're attracted to other things. Start to become aware of all that, because once you start bringing more awareness to that, you'll start to understand your programming a lot more better, therefore giving you more control and awareness how to reprogram or re-engineer a new state of being. And being aware of your energy, at any time, sitting there and just asking yourself, what is my connection with the present moment right now? Is the present moment my friend? Is the present moment my enemy? And you know this through whether you're riding the state of love, or you're riding the wave of love, or you're riding the wave of fear. Two primary emotions. That's all there is. There is love and there is fear. Now, these are umbrella terms because you can now branch these out into thousands of different emotions. Love can branch out into joyfulness, happiness, enthusiasm, inspiration, peacefulness, abundance, gratitude. Fear can be negativity, suffering, guilt, resentment, anger, sadness, depression, whatever it is, they branch out. Now, over 1,000 different chemical reactions happen in the body when you shift from a state of fear to a state of love. We have anxiety, in my opinion. We have anxiety because the body believes it's in fear. When the body believes it's safe, the anxiety will start to slowly neutralize, because we have gone through experiences in our past that have threatened our emotional state. And through this stressful energy and through this stress we've absorbed over time, the body starts to believe it's in a state of fear, because the body is still very primitive, right? Consciousness is very advanced. The mind is very advanced, but the body itself is very primitive. We feel like when we feel scared, when we feel uplifted, when we feel whatever it is, it's these primitive emotions that we feel in the body, but the body is very primitive. So to reprogram, these emotional states, we really need to understand what our connection is to the present moment. Is the present moment my friend? Is it my enemy? And really understanding what your connection with, and really having the tools and the methods to go in your body, using whether it's the breath, meditation, affirmations, whatever it is that works for you, to kind of shift and transverse that energy from being in a state of fear to a state of love, makes all the difference in the world. Because the more you become better at this and the more efficient you become at this, it's easier for you to always transverse that energy, because everything is energy. Everything is energy, 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 energy. Emotions are energy in motion. You are an energy being, and understanding how to go within your body and cultivate different frequencies is your power. Now, yes, your circumstance might not be representing this uplifted state. Yes, your experiences might not be representing different states in the body to make you happy. But from all the research and case studies I've read into, the people that have really transformed and transversed into a new level of energy had to think greater than the environment. They had to feel independently to whatever was happening around them, and they cultivated such a powerful state in the body, the environment started to change. This is the difference between living under the universal principle of cause and effect, where there's a cause and an effect, and causing an effect, having the ability to cause an effect in your environment. Going back to Dr. Joe Dispenza's teachings, causing an effect all comes from changing your internal state first. When you can change in here first, your life will start to change. It all comes down to changing your energy, changing your frequency, because this is now being broadcasted out into the quantum field. And every single bit of energy that is being radiated from your being is creating a ripple effect in this invisible field. And then that reflects the gravitational pull of the experiences that you are then going to manifest into your life. That's the difference between being a creator and living as a survivor. It's a massive shift. So ask yourself, is the present moment my friend? Or is the present moment my enemy? And always Make the present moment your friend. Change the narrative, change your emotional state, change your thought process, and find ways to be loving. And if there's things in your life that aren't going your way, put your hand on your heart and wish these people love, wish this experience love, bless whatever it is, and do your best. Use all the tools that you have to cultivate a beautiful state, because that's going to work more in your favor than sitting there and scanning your environment to be threatening and fearful, because that just does nothing. Sitting in the chair of worry and rocking all night will not get you anywhere. Will not get you anywhere. So really just understand that when next time you feel fearful or you feel anxious, and learn how to bring your energy back into this state of love and harmony. That's it, guys. That is a wrap. Thank you. I know I covered each point very quickly. I think I probably wrote too many points, and I do have this tendency to speak really fast when I get in the zone. And I apologize if some of you are like, "Hey, he's talking really fast." It's just the way it's just my style, and I am learning to slow it down. I am learning to slow down but even Bruce Lipton, I was watching him. He talks really fast too, and sometimes I talk slow when I guide meditations, and other times when I'm in the zone, it just comes out of me really, really fast. So I apologize for people that are like, "Oh my God, he's talking too fast." But it is recorded. It is recorded for those who want to, watch this recording. Please just go. Alki has just mentioned it in the chat. Thank you, guys. It's been a great session. I'll definitely, if you guys wanted to touch up on any of these subjects, want me to go into more detail. And again, the course that I've got coming in February, we're going to go into detail into these topics. I'll be in the price for the course. There'll be 2 one-on-ones, and there'll be a 2-hour Zoom event with 10 people only. There's only limited spots with 10 people. So if you can afford it, I'd love to work with you guys on a personal level. I did 10 because it's a more intimate course, and I'd love to have the opportunity for anyone that believes that my power can empower, my knowledge and insight can empower them. I would be an absolute honor to work with you guys if you're interested in that. Otherwise, if you resonated with this information and want to be up to date with more of our lives, please follow our channel and you'll be up to date with all our lives, or join our Stressful community to connect with our thriving group and really be a part of a community that supports each other's growth and self-development. Other than that, guys, thank you for being here, and I really appreciate all your attention. And next Thursday, we'll come back with another session. And if you like this information, we will do another session called re-engineer a new self, and we'll make it part 2. So thank you for tuning in, and I will see you guys in the next live.